everybody. Gary Moss with Moss and Associates here with an incredible special today, carrying on our investors educational segment for everybody out there who's investing in different types of strategies. Today, I have the man, the myth, the legend who created his investment career out of a crisis as well. I thought he'd be the perfect person to talk to today, coming out of COVID, all the challenges investors have faced over the last, I guess, year or so now. The new tools, the new mindsets that we're looking at, and all the educational opportunities that Mr. Steve Rozenberg has for you guys all today. So everybody, please welcome Steve. Steve, thank you for being here with us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, brother. Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Likewise, likewise. I miss seeing your, well, I see you all the time on social media. You've got a lot of stuff going on. I can't believe you have enough hours in the day. But man, you are definitely someone I aspire to be as energetic and passionate as you are.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So, okay, let's start real quick on a brief introduction of who is Steve Rozenberg. Again, I love your story and I know we could talk so much about it, but in a nutshell, give us who you are, where you started investing, and what you're doing today.
Sure. Yeah. So Steve Rozenberg, my actual 9-to-5, if you want to call it that, my career is I'm an airline pilot. So I fly for a major airline. I fly Boeing 787 based out of Houston, Texas. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. So I'm from the West Coast. I have this career that I love doing and I love my job. But a day in history happened that changed the course of my life. And that day was 9/11 for me, which is, about 20 years ago. And what it did is it made me realize that the safe, secure job that I thought I had was not so safe and it was not so secure. And it made me realize that I love what I do and I love flying and I still am a pilot, but I also know that I'm an employee. And I realized at that moment that can be ripped away from you at any moment, no matter, there's no such thing as safety and security. Right. And so that took me to starting to learn about real estate, which I knew nothing about. And I started realizing 90% of all the wealthiest people on the planet are tied to real estate in one form or another. So I thought, well, shit, if 90% of the people do it, I might as well jump in on this gang here. So I started learning about real estate and I did it kind of backwards because I really didn't want to do real estate. I just needed some safety and security because after 9/11, we didn't know if the airlines were going to exist or not. So I jumped in. I read a book a week on real estate, just trying to understand this whole new society. I started doing, at the time, it wasn't wholesaling, but it was basically essentially wholesaling contracts and options. I learned how to do these fancy creative real estate like flips and double closings and these kinds of things. Did very well, made enough money, bought an apartment complex with the money that I made after a couple years. Then that turned into buying a bunch of houses, which turned into buying a bunch of wrong houses. So bad that I actually wrote a book on it because I did so poorly at that job. But that actually turned into us creating a management company to manage our houses because nobody would manage them. They were that bad. And so we went down the path of creating a company. We ended up taking that company with the help of a business coach, and we scaled that company to over 1,000 properties in the about 7-year time frame. We're the fastest growing company in the state of Texas of property managers at that point. Subsequently, we ended up taking that company and exiting and selling that business to a much larger venture capital backed company. And that's kind of spawned my career from there. But the whole time I was doing that, I have been an airline pilot. So I have a job, I have a career. I've learned how to focus and be intentional with what I do and with my time. So that's the quick version of me.
Right. No. And again, there's definitely a lot more to it. So if you guys haven't, heard of Steve or seen any of the things he's been doing online, dig deep. There's a lot to learn in your experience, Steve, and you've been, gracious enough to share that with the world because, and I love the title of your book, Failing Our Way to Millions, because as entrepreneurs and real estate investors, we have to fail really to learn, right? And so you embraced that and actually turned it into like an incredible, opportunity and experience and made a lot of money on it. But you had to kind of go to that place to learn and get your ass kicked to get back up and keep going, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, inherently we don't want to look dumb, so we try to avoid failures. But the reality is your biggest lessons and your biggest wins will come from your biggest losses and your biggest failures. So it's actually not something you avoid. I've learned it's actually part of the process of growing and becoming that better person, because it's not just financial. You don't learn you can get, $10 million in the bank and lose it very quickly. It's the lessons that you learn along the way that you have to become someone different. And the only way you can become that new person is, kind of morphing into it. And those are the losses. Those are the lessons, right? You learn a lot more from losing everything and having to rebuild it than just keep having things given to you. So yeah, I learned a lot. I mean, look, I walked that walk. I've been ripped off, lied to, tenants trashed my property, stealing, you name it, but I kept getting back up. I didn't have a choice. I kept getting back up every single time I got punched, kicked, whatever. And I had no option. And I realized that unknowingly, that is the reason that I was able to succeed the way that I have, is because those failures were actually the best and biggest lessons to get me to where I wanted to go.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I mean, we have written down here on the ticker scale, like, take control of your own destiny. And that's kind of one of the, the themes that I'm seeing on your website and through a lot of your discussions and trainings. And it's really like, it kind of leads into what we're talking about right now. We just came out of COVID, right? Like no one that, I mean, in my lifetime or that I really know has gone through a pandemic of this magnitude. And, been, especially right now, real estate investors who've had, I mean, just to be specific, right? There's a lot of people that, come across really challenging times through the last year, but let's specifically put that on real estate and landlords who have owned properties, wherever that may be, and tenants that they've lost their jobs, whatever the case, financial hardships. People weren't able to pay their bills, their mortgages, their rents, a lot of financial challenges. And if you're holding quite a few properties or even an apartment building, this could have created a very big challenge for that investor as well. So totally different, but similarly, like coming out of the crisis that you came out of and really built your real estate investment career to take control of your own destiny. Many investors right now may be thinking like, man, maybe I don't want to be a real estate investor. This didn't go very well over the last few years, or maybe I'm thinking of getting into real estate investing, but I'm kind of just watching on the lessons that just happened the last year. What conversations are you having with the people that, are in your circles and your trainings about the new kind of mindset? What lessons that we learned coming out of that crisis and how to apply it in a totally new, I mean, it's similar, but it's a new market. Let's just be honest. Things are different now. Right? Yeah,
no, that's a great question. It's very relevant, obviously. And I get the opportunity to speak around the country. I've been to other places, Australia speaking, and I do a lot of stuff with Bigger Pockets. So I get to engage with a lot of people outside of my bubble, let's say. And one of the things I've learned, you said several things that I'd like to hit on is, number one is real estate is a business. When you own a rental property, I don't care if it's one property or it's 50 properties, you own a business. Right. And a business, the definition of a business is a commercial profitable enterprise that runs without you. Okay. So it's running, it's doing its own thing, laws, rules, regulations, but that's essentially a business. There's nowhere in that business model that it says, I feel, or I think, or maybe. It's not, it's data, it's numbers, and it's metrics, right? Okay. So what I have learned is businesses follow cycles. If you want to see the future, you look at the past. Real estate in generally follows a 7-year cycle. It goes up, it goes down, and it goes sideways. So I'll give you an example. When I first got in, it was 2001, right? It crashed. .com, all that was going on.
Right.
2008, that was 7 years. It crashed again. 2014 was when oil prices were 140 a barrel. It crashed again. Now, it didn't do a national crash, but there were micro areas that crashed.
Right.
2020, 2021, it's doing the same thing. Now, you can change out the catastrophe, the pandemic, but if you look back in history and if you look back in time, there's always going to be market corrections. It's cyclical. Real estate is a cycle. So my point is I think, or I shouldn't say think, from the data, right. There will be more wealth created in the next 12 to 18 months than in the last decade. Now, where does that wealth come from? Well, it comes from other people who did not have their business set up correctly. So this is a way for it to kind of, real estate is basically cleansing itself of people that don't have the right business model set up. So there's one way to look at this and go, wow, real estate sucks. The people for the last 200 years here have it wrong. This pandemic is right, and I should never get into real estate. Or you could look at this and go, you know what? Maybe there's a lesson here. I get it. It always sucks saying that because there's no way to find a lesson when you're losing your money. But you can go, you know what? Maybe I should not have overextended myself. Maybe I needed to have better reserves. Maybe I should have thought a little bit differently, not been as aggressive, because the majority of people I talk to have never been through a cycle. They've never been through a down. They think it's always up. But if you look at anything, there's always cycles. I mean, again, if you go back in time in real estate, you will always see cycles, and it's normally about 7 years. So my point is yes, there will be people that lose everything, and that is sad. But there are going to be a lot of people that become multi-millionaires by taking action. So a lot of people ask me, what is the difference? You know, I'm an airline pilot, right? So a lot of airlines are going through challenges right now, just like they were after 9/11. I get case in point. So I fly to Brazil. I just came in from Brazil this morning. The plane holds 300 people, and we had 52 people on board. It doesn't take a genius or a mathematician to say how much longer can they keep doing that till they start letting people furlough and they start letting people go and park in airplanes, right? It's business. Right. So it's very similar to 9/11. It's just slower. 9/11 was in 48 hours. This is over the course of a year. So it's kind of like killing you with a spoon as opposed to just ripping off the Band-Aid, right? But my point is that when you look at this, all of a sudden you start to see this trend, right? And the difference of what happened then to what happened now, you can call it whatever you want, but there's a market correction. Right. When people ask me, they say, Steve, what is different now for you to back then? And my only answer is I took action. I didn't know what action to take, but you know what? I was not going to freaking sit there and let my ass get kicked and lose everything without at least putting up a fight. And so my thing was I didn't know what to do. I just knew I had to do something. Now with technology and YouTube and Facebook, it's much easier to be intelligent and to make smarter decisions because I had to get a library card. I had to go rent books at the library. It was different, right? But the analogy is it was one word. It was action. That's all I did. I stopped listening to I didn't have any stories in my head because there wasn't all this social media and all this stuff. I had no option. And so for people that are watching this, yes, there will be some despair. There will be some people that lose everything, but it doesn't dissolve. It's a market share. It shifts. It's sharing. You're sharing that market with someone else. It doesn't go away. It's going to shift to someone else. It'll recorrect, and those people will jump in and they will take advantage of the situation by having a better business model and taking action. So that's kind of where I see this.
Yeah. And again, I love it. And I think all great things come from action, right? We can be paralyzed right now by what just happened and do nothing or do something about it and change and pivot and whatever the case. Right. And I think that's kind of generally going into like the next discussion, right? Is like what sort of action now? What is that newer mindset? I have got a lot of people in California right now that, again, prices are skyrocketing. If you're trying to buy a home and have it cash flow, like we're working on like 2 to 3%, ROI margins, which is razor thin, right? Mm-hmm. And so, there's a lot of people right now that are looking at the model and saying, maybe we cash out of California, prices are high, right? And reinvest somewhere to get cash flow, right? To just have that ongoing cash flow. So our margins aren't so thin. If we do get caught off guard, we're not completely underwater. So there's a lot of people investing out of state or in apartment buildings or other strategies, right? And one of the things that you and I've been learning from you as well, you've been kind of part of a lot of groups that offer plug and play options to investing out of state. You pretty much took the state of Texas by storm and made it work for you. But at the end of the day, talk to us about a little bit about out-of-state investing, especially when it comes to people coming from California. And I'm sure you're speaking to a lot of people in that boat right now.
Yeah. And look, I'm from California, so I get it. I understand the dynamics, right? And I understand it's kind of like it's I'm not gonna say it's a unicorn, but it's definitely different, right? Now, the biggest challenge I think people have is they jump from one to another without really knowing if they're jumping forward or jumping backward. And what I mean by that is some people may say, like, I want to go to Texas because I want cash flow. And I'll start asking them, I start asking them questions. what do you want out of real estate? What is the goal that you want to have accomplished by buying real estate? Forget what it is. It's an asset class. It is just a vehicle. What does the destination look like? And if, maybe they have well-paying jobs and they don't need the cash flow right now, but they want appreciation. Okay. Then why are you looking for deals that are just cash flowing? The biggest challenge I had, and a lot of people have, is we buy the tactic first, which is the property. Right. Then we try to fit it into a strategy, and we have no idea if it's even getting us to our goal. So my thing is flip the script, right? We want the destination first. The biggest mistake I'll say that a lot of investors do, and I was one of them, is we, as entrepreneurs, we want to roll up our sleeves and take immediate action, right? Because we think we're doing something. The problem is it takes 3 to 4 times more cost, energy, and frustration to get out of a bad deal than it is to wait. So what? And look, you and I we've both done bad deals. I've done stupid shit. I'm the first to admit it. And my book is all about the mistakes that I made. But the thing is you can, with technology today, right? And I did a series on Bigger Pockets where I helped a person buy a property sight unseen, and we did the whole thing. Never saw the property. But my point is you can use technology to your advantage, right? We have these apps and softwares, and it works the same with investing. Many people I talk to, and they think they want to buy just in California. And my first question to them is, do you own stock? They say, yeah. So, okay, give me the name of a stock. Chase Bank. Okay. Do you only buy Chase because it's in your neighborhood? No, you buy Chase stock because it's got good numbers, good PE, good dividends, all that stuff.
Right.
So why real estate is the same thing. It's just another asset class. It's actually the most oldest and most safest and secure asset class. So why do you limit to your backyard? Because real estate is a business. If it depends on you to be involved in it, it's no longer a business. It's now a job. Your job is to be the CEO of that business. You run that business off of data and numbers. So going back to your question, whenever people ask me, where should I go? My first question is what's the goal? Right. So a simple analogy that I could put to people that I use a lot, because I'm not very smart, so I make it simple, is if we want to go to Disneyland, if we're in San Diego and we want to go to Disneyland, that's the destination. All of a sudden, okay, I'm going to get on the 5 freeway to the 405 to Disneyland Drive. I'll make a right, left. That is the strategy. Okay. That's the freeway, right? Now, you're not going to get on 5 and go 5 south because that's the wrong strategy. Now, let's say you get on the freeway and you get lost and you pull over and you ask someone for directions. What is the first thing once you pull over and roll down your window, I'm going to ask you?
Where are you going?
Where are you going? And if you're like, I don't know, I'm just on the freeway driving, I'm going to go, well, then I can't help you. So it sounds pretty stupid. It sounds unrealistic. And you go, well, I'd never do that. But yet that's what so many people do when it comes to investing. They get on the freeway, they start driving, and then they're like, what should we do? Now, the tactic is the actual property. That's the house, multifamily, mobile home, self-storage, whatever it is. Imagine getting on the 5 freeway on a snowmobile. It's going to take you about 2 seconds to realize this tactic is not going to get you to where you want to go. Right. Many people do that. We buy a house or we buy a mobile home or an apartment, and all of a sudden we're like, this is not getting me where I want to go. So again, it's just trying to put it in a different term for people. But the reality is you've got to plan this out. So when I say the next 12 to 18 months, there'll be more wealth created. This is a free time to sharpen that mental axe. Right. Educate yourself, really sit down. Like I coach people and mentor people, and I tell them, listen, before you do anything, sit down, not only with you. So here's the biggest challenge that I have learned from entrepreneurs. And again, I speak from experience. And I say this very respectfully to people watching, is as entrepreneurs, we can be the most selfish people out there. And what I mean by that is we watch this podcast show, we read books, we listen to audiobooks, we go to seminars. We're doing this for the people that we care about, but we never involve them in the plan. They have no say. They have no idea what they're doing. Now, you and your wife, you buy real estate together. You guys are together as a team. But most people take it upon themselves to say, I need to take care of this. I'll handle it. And what happens is they go, the spouse at one point may go, why are you doing this? Like, this isn't what I wanted. And so, again, it's being selfish. You're doing it for the ones you love, but you're not sharing what you're doing. So what I tell people, first thing you got to do, you're in California, your properties are not performing. Now, look, you make money 5 ways in real estate. You make money by cash flow. You make money by depreciation. You make money by equity capture. you make money by debt pay down, and you make money by appreciation. 5 ways. Now, debt pay down and depreciation, those are going to happen on their own. That's the tenant paying their rent, and that's the taxes depreciating. So you got 3 things. You got appreciation, you got equity capture, and you got cash flow. You got 3 things. So my question to people is, which one of those gets you to your goal? Which one is the right freeway? You're not going to get on all 3 freeways. You got to pick a freeway. Right. And they say, you know what? I need cash flow right now to support my life. Okay. Then when you're looking at a deal, that's the freeway you need to be focused on. So whenever you're looking at a deal, when you're looking at a city, what city provides me the best cash flow, cash on cash return of any other city that exists? That's a good start. If you say, you know what, I'm a doctor, I don't need the money, right? I'm an airline pilot, I don't need the money. Okay, then what's the goal? Well, I'd like to have appreciation, and I'd like to at least be cost neutral, so I'm not losing money. Okay, let's look at that then. So the main freeway is appreciation. So it's a matter of being focused in what you're looking to buy. If you're looking out of state, don't just look at everything. Look and say, okay, speak to the spouse, everything. What does our life look like? I use a simple example. I call it a 20-20-20 rule. 20 properties in 20 years, giving you $20,000 a month in cash flow. It's a start, right? I don't know if it's good, bad, and different. It's just it's a goal. So a goal has to have a amount, and it's got to have a deadline. If it doesn't have an amount and it doesn't have a deadline, it's a dream. So you got to say, I got 20 years that we've got to make this happen. Okay, 20 years. So, okay, that means that I've got to have all 20 properties paid off in 10 years so that the last 10 will be the snowball effect and they'll pay each other off. That means that I need to buy 2 properties a year for the next 10 years, which means I need to close on a property every 6 months, which means every 3 months I need to have the make ready done so I can get it rented. So that means every quarter I've got to be searching for the property. Now you know what your goals, your tasks are to get to your end goal. So now you know whenever you're looking at a deal and you need them to each make $1,000 a month in cash flow. So if you look at a property and you say, hey, this property's, $800 a month, I'm going to go, that's not the goal. The goal is $1,000. You need at least $1,500 a month in rent to cover, taxes and insurance, whatever, to get the $1,000. So you see what I'm saying? There is a logical way to do this, but just, pin the tail on the donkey and trying to find a city because you go, oh, my cousin lives in Knoxville, I think I'll go to Knoxville. It's like, what? It's a business. It's data and numbers. So I'm not sure if that's what you want to know, but there's my answer.
No, you know what? I mean, it's exactly perfect because what I heard you say was A, it's math, right? Which is a business, essentially. And B, it's, I guess a business plan. And ultimately it's a mindset of being able to, when you made the analogy of it being a stock, right? Which is something that we talk with our investors about all the time. A lot of people say, well, I want to touch it, feel my property, et cetera. I mean, as being, going through property management and developing that team, none of us really want to be the property manager, right? Like the goal is to hire that out so we're not the ones managing all the properties. But I think the point is developing that mindset that now, and we were just talking about Mexico, right? My journey into Mexico and a lot of people going down there to invest there, state lines and country lines and whatnot are being kind of like, essentially eroded in people's minds because they're going after the right strategy, right? And the boundaries are becoming less restrictive to be able to go to a different state or whatever the case, but having a business plan, right? Being conservative in a sense and making sure you're minding your P's and Q's and all of your math to develop that right plan, right? Now, what about the one thing that also is challenging is the trust, right? Like somebody may want cash flow. Who do I go to? How do I find that person? You know what I mean? Obviously through referrals, through different systems, but there are people out there. And if there's an investor that's looking to explore other options, whether it's out of state, in state, how do you recommend that they seek out those solutions?
Well, and let me just touch a little bit on the international side you're talking about. When we had our management company, 1,000 properties, 50 to 60% of our clients did not live in the state of Texas or in the country. So you got to ask yourself, what is it these people out of country don't have a problem with? We had people from Australia, from China, from Canada buying stuff in Texas, sight unseen, because they would trust us, right? And we'll talk about the trust issue. And we have a problem just going to another city. So and so you sit there and look at it, they are running it like a business, right? So you buy something in Mexico, you buy, it's a business. It is a mathematical equation, right? That's all it is. So now when you go back and you talk about how do you find someone that you can trust, you are the CEO of the company. They work for you. You have to have meetings. You have to have conversations. You have to interview them. You have to have expectation meetings. You have to let them know, as the CEO, your job is to have the vision, be the leader, set up the meetings. That is your job. Your job is not to go lay tile. I used to have, once in a while, I'd get an investor, from the West Coast or something, and he'd be like, hey, I got a property. We locked it up. I'm like, okay, cool. He's like, I'm going to fly down. I'm like, okay, well, are you an appraiser? No. Are you an inspector? No. Are you a realtor? No. I'm like, no offense, but why are you wasting your time coming to Texas? I don't understand. I mean, if you want to have drinks with me, that's fine, but what's the value? He's like, well, I want to touch it and feel it. I'm like, it's 4 walls and a roof. I'm like, it's 4 walls and a roof. Go touch your own freaking house at home. Like, it's not the roof. It's not the 4 walls and the roof. It's the business model running in the 4 walls and the roof. That's what makes you successful. Spend more time understanding the business model that runs inside of it. So my son, 14 years old, he bought his first rental property. Okay. So he came to me and his dad, I want to buy a rental property, and the whole conversation. And so we bought a rental property. Right. And so people are like, oh, did you have him paint the house? Did you have him clean it? And I'm like, no, I don't want him doing that. And they're like, why not? I'm like, because that's teaching him to trade his time for money. No offense, but I don't want him to be an employee. I want him to be the CEO. Why don't you spend more time with your kids teaching forecasting, accounting, P&L statements? Get them to understand that side of the business. I don't want them to be the employee. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that's hypocritical because I don't do that. Why should I make him do that? I want him to understand that it's a business. So to answer your question, you have to have expectation meetings. When I tell people, I've got a sheet, if I'm happy to give it to you and we can send it out, but it's top 20 questions you should ask a property management company. What's your eviction rate? What's your make ready time? What's your cost to turn? What you should be asking them questions. You don't, just because they're the cheapest, that's like driving down the street and you see a doctor flipping a sign that says 50% off surgeries. You're not going to go to that doctor. You're going to go, no way, I'm not using that guy for my surgery. But could be suicide, right? But that's what you're doing with your property. You're basically committing financial suicide by going with the cheapest person. We all know cheaper is not cheaper. We've heard that our whole lives. But yet when it comes to, this is the second biggest investment besides your own personal house, and you're just doing it on a whim. And what happens is you find out that it's some crappy company that charge flat fee, whatever the case may be. And the owner gets frustrated and the owner's like, you guys suck. And you know what the property management company says is, we've always sucked. You just never asked us. So, they're like, we've been doing this for 20 years. We know we suck. That's why we're the cheapest, because we can't afford staff and this, that. So my point is you've got to slow down to speed up. When I did the series with Joe on Bigger Pockets, we spent the majority of our time building the team out. You build out the team. Once you have the team in place and you basically have created the funneling system, now you're just pouring the water in the funnel and it just goes. So once we had the team set up, we spent the majority of our time on Bigger Pockets, interviewing, having conversations. I bet you if you spend a whole week on trying to find management companies and you went through everybody on Google, by the end of that week, you're going to go, I got the guy or girl. Yeah. I got the company. Same thing with a contractor, but you got it. We're so busy doing other stuff. It's kind of a secondary thing. We don't think about it. So it's an afterthought. And when it's an afterthought, that is where your money goes. And then you're shocked that it didn't work.
So really, it might be more advantageous to build the team, then find the property. Because with the right team, they're going to be able to feed you the right property, and it becomes like buying a stock because you hired the right 100% manager or whatever.
Yeah. First, you create the goal, and then you say, okay, where is this Disneyland? Where does this goal exist? This goal exists in Houston, Texas, Alabama, Fayetteville, wherever. That's where the goal is. Okay, now I know. Let me build the team. And then let me make sure that everything works, right? I can make this happen, build the team out. And again, that's why I say the last piece of the puzzle is actually the tactic. Because now you have your team of advisors. You got the realtor finding deals. You got your property management company advising, going, you can't get $1,800 for that. You can only get $1,400 because we manage houses in those areas. And that's not true. So that's what the team is for. The team represents you, and they come back and feed you information. And so we spend so much time doing, we don't formulate the team. It's kind of like planting a seed for a big tree house when you retire, and 2 days later you put a tree house over it and you're like, this tree sucks. It won't even hold anything. And you're like, you got to wait 20 years, man. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. So you have to build that team. And that's the key. It sucks because it's not what we want to hear. It's not the fun, sexy, that we see on HGTV, but it's actually what makes you successful.
Well, again, it's a different mindset, right? Of how to actually get to where you need to go. And just a real quick reference, what you were talking about with Joe and the Bigger Pockets series, just in case people are wondering about that. But you guys did a really incredible series with him. Basically, it was a contest. Basically, he won $20,000, correct me if I'm wrong, to go and do an out-of-state investment, and it followed the process, essentially speaking, right?
Yeah, so basically, he's Joe Roberts. He's a Marine, naval aviator out of Camp Lejeune. He won $20,000 to buy an investment property, and my job was to coach him. We had to identify a city based on, he already had 2 properties. So we had to identify a city. We had to build out the team in that city. We had to get the deals and then basically do the rehabs. So we found a deal in Atlanta. We picked Atlanta. We built out the team. We found we went through like 2 or 3 properties, inspections and shit. But we found the deal, did a $35,000 rehab. So it wasn't cheap. And we did a rehab, sight unseen, put the tenant in, rented the property, and then he got deployed and he's never once seen the property. And he's bought 2 more since then. Because I told him, I said, listen, man, I said, if you follow this recipe, success leaves a recipe. So does failure, but success leaves a recipe. I'm like, if you do what I tell you and you listen to me, you'll be able to do this in any city in the world. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. It's the same recipe. He's like, I'll do what you say. So he did exactly what I told him. And within like 3 months, we had a deal. And I'm like, it's not that hard. And he's like, no, he's like, I thought this would be way more difficult. He still has not seen the house.
Well, the point being, for anybody watching this today who wants to actually see the recipe for success in action, I would encourage them to go back to Bigger Pockets, find that series and watch that, because that is incredibly great information. I mean, I love the theme and just everything about it. It's what a lot of people aspire to do, don't have the opportunity, but actually seeing that work, I think, will give a lot of people aspiration, ideas, and encouragement. So, all right, getting onto like the last topic that I wanted to pick your brain about is the tools. I mean, you are doing a lot of, you got a brand new mastermind out. You just wrote a book. I mean, obviously like you said, you're connected with a lot of people in the investment space, like the Bigger Pockets group and a lot of other people that you are training and teaching. I mean, again, there's information flowing all around there. So tell us about tell us about your mastermind, the trainings, and some of the tools, that you guys are using right now to help newer investors develop, or seasoned investors that are trying to take it to the next level.
Yeah. So I created the mastermind because I think that one of the challenges is there's so many people out there that talk about how to do something, how you flip a house, how you rehab it, how you this, how, but nobody ever talks about why. You drive down the street. Why is this property on the left-hand side better property than that side? I mean, it's 4 walls and a roof. And so I started understanding this because nobody ever taught that to me. And had they taught that to me, or I should take responsibility, had I taken the time to learn that, I would have been a much more sophisticated investor, and I would have learned probably a lot quicker and made a lot more money than I would have in the beginning. So the mastermind is for people to understand, why do they want something? And I bring on some top level guys. I just had a friend of mine, Tim Brotz. He's got 4,700 properties. Wow. He's in charge of $450 million. I mean, Bigger Pockets friends, people that I know, I bring them on, and it's Q&A. You can ask them. I mean, it's intimate Q&A. And I just think it's important that you have that ability to connect with people that you wouldn't normally get to talk to. Like, you wouldn't normally get to a Tim Brotz. Like I was fortunate enough last week or 2 weeks ago, I was in Miami. I spoke on stages with Ed Milet and Brad Lee. So I get to engage with people that you wouldn't normally get to, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn their lessons, because these people follow a recipe. They're just like you and I, right? And they have a recipe. So I created the mastermind. And then from there, I actually created an educational course. And this is on Lightspeed, which is Brad Lee's platform, same as Grant Cardone and Tony Robbins. But it shows people the mindset of, how do you go from 0 to 1? Like, what goes through your head? All the negative self-talk, all the things that you have to do to prep and prepare, who needs to be on your team just to get one deal, right? Who cares about these syndications and all that stuff? Let's just get one. And then once you get one, how do you go from 1 to 5? Because you have to change how you think. You have to change your position. You have to bring different people on. And then once you get 5, how do you go 5 to 10? Then how do you go 10 to 20? How do you go 20 and beyond? I talk about how do you get your children involved in real estate? How do you deal with partnerships? Majority of partnerships ends in dissolution. So these courses are basically, they're integrated courses, they're interactive. And I mean, these are shot, I went to Hollywood and I filmed in a studio, and I mean, they're top level, but it's stuff that people always ask me. And I'm like, well, shit, I might as well just make courses on this, because this is what people want to know, right? This is when they get me alone, like, Steve, why did you do this? Why did you do that? And I'm like, this is the nitty gritty. So anyway, so I created a course. It's in the Mastermind. It's all that. I do a free webinar that explains it to people. I'm actually doing one tonight. But yeah, I think it's important. Look, I don't do this because I need to. I mean, I'm fine with real estate. I'm fine with being an airline pilot. I do this because I think it's important that we give back, because real estate investing is a very small community. There's not many of us, and there's not many of us that don't have their hands in other people's pockets trying to take something from them. I'm not judging other people for doing that. That's just not me. I like to, as you know, I like to help people. I'm always available. Right. And I just think it's important to give back when you can. And this is the way that I can give back to people in a small, but very, very effective way to help people be more successful. And that's kind of what I do.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why, like, I'm so grateful for even our time today. We've met and talked quite a few other times as well, you know, and just the amount of, I don't know, your passion, first of all, is something incredible that really we can feel on every other side, right? And your love for the industry, and just, you know, but all the information that you've learned and the lessons that you've been able to pay forward to so many other people. Many people don't get to I mean, you know, to even get to talk to you. You know, you're talking to these other people that you don't get access to. I mean, give yourself a lot more credit, Steve. You've been through a lot. And there's a lot to learn from you and from the experiences you've been through. And so, I mean, grateful today, even to have, you know, the conversation that we're having. I feel like a lot of people are going to get incredible value out of this. But I mean, they can go to your website, which I have down below, steverozenberg.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, they can go to steverozenberg.com. They can also go to Steve's Mindset. So it's Steve's mindset.com if they want to see my courses and stuff. If they want to join the webinar tonight, it's stevesmindset.com/live. But if you go to the steverozenberg.com, you can find it all there. Also on Instagram, you can find me on, you know, Rozenberg Steve, on Facebook. I mean, yeah. I'm out there. Like you said, Gary, I mean, I'm out there. And again, I want to help people. If I can help people and I can give people, and you know, they can put their head down at night, you know, because the one thing I'll say is, you know, it's one thing to lose money. It's another thing to go through the stress and frustration that I went through, and many people go through, when you lay your head down at the pillow at night and you're going, is this going to basically ruin everything that I've done because I made a wrong decision purchasing this property or properties? And, you know, I get a lot of people, I'm going to buy multifamily. And then I tell them the real part of multifamily, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. I only knew about the glitz and glamour. I didn't know that there was a dark side. I'm like, there's a dark side to everything, man. They just don't talk about it. Like, hey, there's a dark side to the moon. There's a dark side to everything. So I just try to make it relatable. Listen, just educate yourself, because once you buy something, it's no longer their problem. It's now your problem. And if you're not prepared, you have all the time in the world. The deal of a lifetime passes in front of your face once a week. I'm a firm believer of that. Don't jump until you're ready. Make sure that you're focused, you're driven, you know exactly what you want, and then go after what you want. And don't just jump at anything because you think you should. That's not the right way to do it. And that, again, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Maybe I've got it all wrong, but I've learned the hard way, and the hard way is not fun.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly done the wrong way and then turned it into an incredible way, Steve. So I think that there's definitely some, you know, success to be shared there. So, you know, I'll basically tag you in those things that you just said, you know, in the, this is live right now on Facebook and YouTube. So we'll go in there and we'll tag up all of those opportunities where people can go and find you, and even find the live event tonight. Super helpful, man. And again, thank you so much for all the information and your time, man. I know that you got in really late from Brazil, and you know, still got on the line with us today. So man, I owe you. Drinks on me.
My pleasure, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love what you're doing, and keep doing what you're doing, man. We're all grinding, so I appreciate the time.
That's right. Steve, we're signing off here. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything, and we'll be in touch for sure.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.